I believe it was Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius who once sang, "What's cooler than being cool, ice cold?" And in honor of his banger song lyrics, today we're going to be talking about fighters who, regardless of the situation, are impossible to rattle. Be it a high-pressure title fight, a heated confrontation, or any other scenario that evokes strong emotion in the cage or out of it, these 10 stoics remain at all times absolutely stone cold.
What's up, guys? Hope you're doing good. Just want to stop and say thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring this video today. 293 is this weekend. All right, it's going to be a banger of a pay-per-view. We're going back to Australia, and Israel Adesanya finally has a chance to silence Sean Strickland after all the trash talk, the build-up, the nonsense, okay? Do you think he gets it done, or do you think Sean actually has the tools to unseat the champion? He might do. I mean, in some crazy world, sure. One thing I want you to do for me is let me know who you're taking in the comments down below, Sean Strickland or Israel Adesanya. And make sure if you do want to bet on this week's fights, you do it at DraftKings Sportsbook. They're offering new customers who bet just $5, $200 in bonus bets instantly. Get in on the action this weekend, okay? Make your picks, but make sure you're doing it with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. And make sure you use the promo code ONPOINT. Massive props to DraftKings for sponsoring us here at MMA On Point. We always appreciate it. Let's go back to the video.
I'm Tommy from MMA On Point. A huge thank you to our biggest channel supporters and our Hall of Famers. And these are the 10 most unshakable fighters in MMA history. Number 10, Oleg Taktarov. Imagine your reaction if you were in a professional fight with someone who had the same manager as you, and seconds in they let you secure a choke and get the win. You'd be confused, probably angry, concerned about what all this means. It would be damn near impossible not to react. Unless you're Oleg Taktarov. Then you just kind of look at the guy with a slightly confused face and then walk out of the cage for the next one. While he couldn't have celebrated his UFC 6 tournament win over Tank Abbott if he wanted to due to pure exhaustion, even if he was as fresh as a daisy, the most we'd have gotten out of him was an expressionless fist pump. Oleg's stoic badassery has made for a long and prolific career, playing mostly silent heavies in movies and television, going all the way back to 1997, and he's still doing it today. Like a few others on this list, a lifetime of Russian martial arts training and life in the former Soviet Union made for a tough-as-nails fighter who had very little emotional reaction either way regardless of the circumstance. Number 9, Dan Henderson. You would never think such a chill dude could be an absolute killer, but those are pretty much the defining features of Dan Henderson. When he wasn't demolishing people with H-bombs in the second half of his career, he was quietly enjoying being one of the coolest dudes ever. It's like nothing could bother the man. Well, except Mike Bisping. And it's true that he threw an extra shot, but the ref still hadn't jumped in yet, and it's also true that he said it felt good, but he was super chill when he said it.
Probably felt better to knock him out than for the bonus check.
And yes, he did make the iconic image of him jumping into the air to deliver that extra blow, his brand logo, but Bisping could have gotten Gandhi to throw down, so I don't think any of this disqualifies Hendo from our list. Dan was also able to keep his composure under heavy fire during some all-time classic bouts, and it was that cool-headedness that always kept him in those fights.
Yeah, I was able to really land some good counter punches and slow him down and knock him silly a little bit right at the beginning of the fight.
That and his sledgehammer hands, of course. Henderson's the definition of looking like someone you could have a beer with.
What was the first thing that you ate right after the fight?
I cannot say that on TV.
Maybe a beer to taco.
I love my wife.
And the fact that he's anything but that in the cage makes him a worthy entry. Number 8, Islam Makhachev. Alright, so barring a single moment of temporary insanity following UFC 229, Islam absolutely belongs on this list. Far more so than Khabib, who tended to wear his heart on his sleeve a bit more and was more prone to conflict outside the cage. You know, like the 229 brawl that he instigated. Makhachev has otherwise been essentially an emotional void. There is nothing good, there is nothing bad. He fights dispassionately, he wins dispassionately. Even when he was in deep waters with Alexander Volkanovski, it was his ability to not freak out that carried him through the end of that fight. Even the frustration of not being able to find top-tier fights for a while when he was clearly headed for the title picture never led to any kinds of outbursts or unnecessarily aggressive callouts. He handled it about as even keel as you could. So if it takes Dylan Dennis to fire someone up, a guy that would get Wonder Boy or Sage Northcutt to commit assault,
You shut the fuck up, kid.
I think we can exclude that one moment considering that at all other times, Islam is in near complete stoic control. Number 7, GEGARD MOUSASI. What I truly love about this man is how, unlike many on this list, where it's hard to tell what they're really thinking or feeling, when it comes to nearly anything, MOUSASI is generally speaking very unhappy with how things are going.
Machida, and he's not on steroids. The guy was fucking greased up, and he looked like a 15-year-old boy when I fought him. It was so fucking slippery. He's a cheater. What can I say?
At least when he started being vocal about things during the latter part part of his UFC run.
Well, when you get screwed, you're gonna say that. They should pay me more. I'm worth more.
And it's true that he could lay in some trash talk from time to time.
The best fighter doesn't always win.
Correct, Amanda.
It happened with you and Luke Rockhold.
But again, like Hendo, this is Bisbeen we're talking about, so even when Moose is complaining we're talking trash, he's doing so in that signature deadpan style.
What is it? My nationality? Do you want me to dye my hair blonde? What the fuck?
And that of course follows him into the cage, where you will never once see Gegard lose his composure regardless of how a fight is going. And no matter what the outcome is, you'll never see him celebrate too much or show any emotion after a loss, which again, given how vocal he has been about things that bother him, unlike most on this list, it is a testament to how in control of his emotions he is, that he's as unexcitable as he is. Number 6, Cub Swanson. I've always been fascinated by just how calm and collected Cub Swanson is at all times, even in the middle of a firefight, and he has been in some of the best ever, like his war with Doo-Ho Choi, my personal favorite fight of all time. He's even joked that Greg Jackson will tell him to show some emotion in the corner between rounds because he seems just too chill, even though of course when he stands back up, it's going to be pure violence again. I had the pleasure of talking with Cub for a few hours on my podcast a while back, and the two things that stuck with me were that he was the most relaxed person I have ever spoken to, and a story he told about having to become Killer Cub before a fight, a process he does in the back to transform himself so that he can be the violent man that he is in the cage. Cub was not always the stoic we see today. He was on a different path earlier in life, full of partying and gangs, a side of himself that he worked to eliminate through martial arts and taps into only when he's inside the cage. It's one thing to be stoic all your life, it is another to achieve that calm through discipline, which makes Cub a very unique entry on our list. Number 5, Gunnar Nelson. With the exception of dancing to Call on Me, of course, and I mean, who doesn't get down to that song, there are very few fighters you'll ever see that are more even-keeled than Gunnar Nelson, which makes it kind of funny that he's good friends with Conor McGregor, considering they are nearly polar opposite when it comes to personality. After over a year layoff, Nelson was asked how he'd been doing recently, and his response is an encapsulation of his demeanor.
Not much.
Yeah, you know, just existing like humans do until we don't anymore. Nelson's calm, methodical approach to life
What's up? I'm Gunnar Nelson.
has translated into a fantastic and patient submission game that has seen him earn 5 performance bonuses in the UFC. But you won't see him celebrating them because the biggest reaction you'll get out of Nelson is a half smile and a quick fist pump into the air. Number 4, Rory MacDonald. There are several fighters on this list that are scary because of their stoic nature, but with those fighters, it's more so about their level of physical intimidation mixed with our inability to know what they're thinking about because they rarely emote. Rory is the only one here that's scary, like, please don't put me in a hole in the ground and bring me food and water with a pulley. And I say that in the most complimentary way possible. When asked once what he thought about people labeling him the Canadian Psycho, he said, quote, "I'm indifferent about it. I don't really care," which is exactly what you would expect Rory to say, and pretty much sums up this man's life philosophy. Albert Camus would approve. Rory is seemingly unfazed by everything. You're talking about someone who walked out to pop music for years that he didn't choose because he never bothered to correct anybody on it. His unfazed demeanor carried him through one of the most brutal fights in MMA history against Robbie Lawler that saw this man's face get completely broken. But even after all that, he was still the stone cold Red King we have always known and loved.
After I defeat you, I will eat your heart, feast on your family, and then I will go to Disneyland.
If that fight does not shake you, then nothing will. Number 3, Mirko Krokop. Like many of the fighters on this list, there's something so awe-inspiringly terrifying about the juxtaposition between a superhuman level of calm at nearly all times and creating violence when in a fight. And not many bring that type of fear about quite like Mirko Krokop. Here's a guy who grew up pounding on a makeshift punching bag in a freezing cold garage, who used train track parts to build his strength before joining the military and becoming a trained kickboxer. His nickname comes from his time in an anti-terrorism unit. Mirko was already the toughest person you have ever heard of before he got into mixed martial arts, and that level of having seen some shit and discipline in training has made Krokop into one of the most stoic fighters in the sport, who is also capable of kicking your head into orbit. When walking out to Wild Boys by Duran Duran is the most colorful part of your personality, you are not exactly the life of the party. Win or lose, Krokop never gets too high or too low. When he was asked to provide USADA with substantial assistance for a lesser punishment after a doping violation in 2016, Krokop remained silent because the man lives by a code, and snitching isn't a part part of it. Number 2, Alex Pereira. When people say they're built different, they're usually not. They're usually just like everyone else. In fact, they're saying that because they're probably insecure. Well, not Alex Pereira. He really is built different, and a huge part of what got him there, I have to believe, was being born into extreme poverty, working full-time in a tire factory, and being a full-blown alcoholic at 13 years old. So when you can come back from decades of that and find discipline through combat sports, yeah, you're going to be as hard as nails, and there's not a damn thing that's going to faze you or excite you that much. It's a bit of a meme at this point showing Alex just not reacting to things that you would assume would excite someone, but the man really is just that stoic. It's not a gimmick. Sure, he does like to talk a bit of smack, but you'll never hear him raise his voice when he does so, and any humor you see from the man has surely come from Glover Teixeira rubbing off on him. Alex is also the scariest person on this list because of the extreme power in his hands and the fact that you know there's nothing you could possibly say or do to shake him, or even know what he's thinking for that matter.
Do you ever look at someone and wonder what is going on inside their head?
Whether in a firefight with Izzy or chilling with the boys at the club, Alex has the ultimate poker face in the fight game. Number 1, Fedor Emelianenko. Forget about the most stoic fighters. Fedor might be one of the most unshakable people that's ever existed, period. On a list full of guys who couldn't be bothered if their face was on fire, the last emperor makes the rest of these fighters we've talked about look like a bunch of high-strung chain smokers pacing around because their DoorDash order was missing an item. The most emotion you have seen out of this man in his career is mild amusement. He was famously dumped on his head by Kevin Randleman, and because he didn't panic, he was able to come back and win. There has been no victory or no setback that seems to have meant anything to him on the surface. Just lost for the first time in over a decade? All good, man, no big deal. Before walkouts, the guy is not backstage psyching himself up for a literal fist fight, he's playing cards with his buddies. Fedor is the definition of a stoic. I'm not sure it would be possible for anything to affect him, and it is not as if he's had a cushy life. He grew up poor, he's had many struggles in his personal life. His brother, who is very much like him, must be a constant source of stress given his many issues. He lives in a town where the high temp 6 months out of the year is around or below freezing. The guy is completely unbreakable, and you knew he was gonna be number 1. I'll tell you who's number 1 for me though. The editor of this video, Luke Taylor. Please go show him some love on his socials. He's a fantastic human being. So are our wonderful channel champions. Thank you all so much. If you'd like to be one of those champions, hit the join button down below. There's all kinds of cool exclusive content, and you might get some say in our videos. If not, liking and subscribing would be pretty awesome. Who are your favorite stoic fighters? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Have yourselves a wonderful day.